So now that we have our ball of clay, what we have to do now is put our thumb inside the clay, start depressing slowly. What we want to do is get it about all the way in, but we don't want to go through. Once we feel, you'll feel kind of the pressure from the clay popping out on the backside. And when you start to feel that, you know you're about there, and we don't want to go any further because, again, we don't want a hole. Okay, so I'm all the way in as far as I need to go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this in the palm of my hand, so that way I can shape this evenly all the way around, so we don't end up flattening it out. You don't want to do this on the table itself, because then you'll flatten it. So what we want to do is just slowly start pushing our thumb and our fingers together, so that way we apply pressure evenly. It's good, you can start at the top, but a lot of times the best thing to do is start at the bottom and work your way up. And you're working like that all the way from the bottom to the top, and then rotate it, and then do the same thing over and over again all the way around. Again, we talked about this being in plastic state, so right now it's in plastic state. It is good to work with. It's not too hard, it's not too soft. Sometimes you can get recycled clay that's too soft, and it's just kind of mushy in your hands. You don't want it to be that mushy. So this is a good state, plastic state for it to be in. We're just going to go around all the way from top to bottom. That way we get a nice even pinch all the way around. And that way our final product will turn out as even as we can possibly make it all the way around. I've done an example before where I cut it in half, so you can see both halves and how even they are all the way around. You want this to be a little bit thinner, but it's sufficient for the it was sufficient for the example at the time. So again, just keep molding, shaping, and then you'll get to a certain point where everything feels pretty good, right? We want it to be really even. If you go around and you feel an area that's lower than another, then we need to even that out. You also, if you play with this too much, if you have it in your hand too long, it's going to dry out. Your hand is soaking up some of the moisture. So what we want to do is not handle it any more than we have to. Sometimes it helps to have water nearby, so you can wet your hands, especially if it's getting if there's some cracking that's showing up. We're getting a little bit of cracking. If any cracks happen, you have to smooth them out right away, otherwise they can get worse as you go. So we're getting really close to our final product here, our final consistency. We want to leave a little bit because we're going to end up trimming some of this off in another process we're going to go over. So we don't have to go extremely thin right off the bat. We want to get it. Our biggest concern right now is making sure that it's even all the way around. Okay, so now that we've got this pretty well even, we also at the bottom, we don't want a V shape. Okay, we want it to go straight down and have a bottom, and then straight up. We don't want it to curve down and come to a point. Okay, so we want to make sure the bottom is pushed out. One way we're going to help do that is once we think we're even all the way around, then we are going to lightly tap it on the surface. So what we're going to do is, right now, before I go any further, I'm going to tap this on the surface, on the bottom, kind of rotate. I'm just lightly tapping. If I don't do this, then I'm going to have a rounded bottom pinch pot. I don't want to have a rounded bottom pinch pot because then it won't stand up straight. So now I've got a flat surface on the bottom, and I'm going to go back, put it in my hand. Remember, keep it in a cup form, curved in your hand like that. Now I'm going to go back through and make sure that everything is as even as it needs to be. Again, continuing to rotate. So once you believe you've got the form that you're looking for, and everything is where you want it, as even, all the way even, again, make sure that you're not doing this while it's on the surface. You can really flatten it out. We don't want to flatten it out. I actually have a little bit more area at the bottom that I can push out. So I'm going to do that, because again, I don't want it to be uneven. I want it to be as even as possible all the way around. Tap it again. Okay. So this is going to be roughly my finished product right now. What we have to do now is we have to let it dry out. You can speed up the process by using a blow dryer, which I don't necessarily recommend unless you're in a time crunch. But otherwise, we're going to store this overnight, let this settle, and we want to get it to the leather hard state. Okay, so we're going to take a plastic bag. We're going to make sure that the bag is free of debris, because we don't want anything attached to the pinch pot itself. And what we're going to do is just store this slightly covered. We don't want to tie it up completely, because if we tie it up completely, then it traps the moisture in there. And in this state, since we're about ready, we just want it to be kind of a loose bag, because we want it to get leather hard. We don't want it to be bone dry tomorrow. Otherwise, it's going to be a little harder to work with. And we want it to be a little easier to work with, but at the right state.